If you are not talking, I would request you to be on mute. If you have a question, you can unmute and then ask, and then please go back to mute again. Right? So that would help us reduce the background noise.
Yeah, see Raju, after getting trained, so when we can work like and what position will be getting to start?
So you can start working as a business analyst. Right? So
Business. Okay, sir. Then what about the QA, quality assurance?
So QA also, see, we are looking at from a functional testing point of view. Now,
Okay.
within QA, there are multiple type of roles again. So when we say testing, it's not just one role. So there would be, a dedicated team which is for testing the performance of the system, right? So there would be some teams which are, experts in automation, right? Now those are specific tool-based focus trainings. Like there would be.
So, but whereas in the business analysis, what we have to do?
Yeah, I'm coming to that. So for a business analyst, you would primarily get involved from a functional testing point of view.
Okay, testing part. Okay.
Yeah. So since you understand the requirements in detail, so you are expected to coordinate the functional testing and provide inputs on some defects, right? If something goes wrong or a defect.
So yesterday you were showing about the positions, what we have to, whom we have to deal with, that all right?
Yes. So so this is the slide what I was referring to, and I've told you that there would be a QA team as well. There would be QA analyst as well, so who are giving you, providing you the testing support, right? So while you will not do the end-to-end testing, right? So there would be QA team, and you would play a role as well. So what is it that we would do? We'll discuss when we are talking about this, chapter 6. Right, so that's where all the testing related topics would be covered. Right. So for now, let's just assume that we would play a part in the testing. Right. What exactly we do, we'll learn that later. Okay. Yeah. So let's continue with the session. I think we have all the team joined in. Right. So yesterday we started off with figuring out who are all the key people we will interact with, and the most important one among them are the subject matter experts, the solution owner, whom we will interact with and then get your BRD approved, and then there will be interactions with the rest of them as well. But figure out that the core team which is giving you the requirements is clearly identified, the subject matter expert. And who would approve your requirements, which is the solution or application owner. Okay. We also looked at RACA metrics, the way in which these roles and responsibilities are documented, right? So sometimes all you would be given is this RACA metrics about the roles and what their involvement is. So you should be able to interpret it. So that's the reason we covered it. Then we looked at what documents we need. Primarily, you need one document which is telling that this is the scope of the system. Okay. So, once you have that view, I think you can, once you have that clear view of what exactly is the, scope of the project, you can actually, continue with your planning of the project, right? Now that scope would either be from one of these two documents. It could be an SOW if there is a vendor involved in it, like let's say Citibank is, outsourcing the project to Accenture. So Accenture would there would be a statement of work signed between Accenture and Citibank. So that is a contractual document which will clearly say that these are the 15-20 features that has to be there as part of the system, right? In some cases, the client themselves handle it, right? Citibank would capture the requirements with in-house business analyst, right? You could be a business analyst in Citibank itself, and then you could be asked to work on this project. In that kind of situation, there is no SOW. Right, so there would be a business case document which should have been prepared earlier. It should have that list of features, right? As per that business case document. Okay, those are the two things that at least one of these two would be available, which lists down all your scope. And what are the deliverables coming out of that? You would have the list of all team members and their roles. Then you would have identified all the activities which would generally perform as a a business analyst, which is basically understanding requirements, documenting them, communicating them, and uh, you know uh, uh, testing it as well, right? So these are the things that you as a business analyst would perform. Madhu, you have a question?
Yes, Raju, yes. Can you please go back to the slide, which is, the deliverables and input? Yeah, this one. So here I have a question. What do you mean by deliverables exactly? Like, how am I related to deliverable? Do I need to make a documentation or something? Or
Yeah.
can you please give me?
Yeah. So the team members and the stakeholder list would be your SOW, the RSA matrix, or maybe a document listing down that there would this person John Doe would be the subject matter expert, and his responsibility would be to give the detailed requirements, and you're clearly identifying the each of every. Uh,
So whose role is that to defining all these things? Do I need
it would
to
be the
do
project
I?
managers. Right?
Oh,
So the
okay.
project manager has to identify. See, I've told you in the first slide, so, right? So for you, make sure that you identify the key people for your project. Right? So
Right.
you would have to interact with the subject matter experts, the solution owner. You just make
Right.
sure that you are aware of that. But usually, listing down these key people and their roles and responsibility would be the project manager's responsibility. Okay, but that would be coming out as a part of your planning phase. So sometimes he would take help of a business analyst also to get it done. So I wouldn't say it's a hard and fast rule that it has to be a project manager or a business analyst. So that comes out as a deliverable as part of the planning. Right? So the list of all team members who are involved in the project and what is their responsibilities. Okay,
Okay.
so you'll work towards that. And then, you would have identified all your activities that you are going to do and the work breakdown structure as well. Right? So that is important. Based on the number of features or functionality that the system is offering, you'd come up with a detailed, work breakdown structure and then the schedule as well. Okay. Then you would also identify what tools you would gather, what tools you would use, right? Like for capturing the requirements, you could use a use case framework. For understanding the requirements, you could use a workshop and prototyping. Right? Now, at this point in time, we will not be able to, understand that because we have not gone through those phases. Right? So we don't know what are the tools available to capture our requirements, to engage our SMEs. Right? So all that tools you'll be able to understand only after we complete the course. Okay? Because
Okay.
there are dependencies. Okay?
Right.
So that's the deliverables coming out. So like I mentioned, the tools and techniques would be covered later in the course, right? So what tools will be used for documentation, for elicitation, what are the techniques? All that would be covered as part of the course. But for now, we just need to ensure that these are the things that would happen as part of the plan. Okay. Then I think we stopped somewhere here where I was talking about the work breakdown structure, and we covered a part of it. Okay, let's continue from here. So broadly, you'd create a work breakdown structure. Right? So which has this view, right? So broadly, any project you pick, this would be the structure in which your activities would happen, right? So you would first understand and document the requirements. This would take the significant amount of time. So the first task, right? On a day-to-day basis, you will go talk to the customer or create work, conduct workshops, or you will engage him in multiple ways, but understand the requirement is part of it. And what do? You also start documenting it. So it won't be like you first understand all requirements and then start documentation. Both will be simultaneously done. So we'll identify that as one single task. Okay. So your typical day here would be maybe a couple of hours you will spend with the customer understanding the requirements, and the rest of the day you'd spend documenting that. Okay, so that's your requirement illustration and documentation. Then once all your requirements are captured, then you would submit that document, the business requirements document, to the client for review. Okay, so the responsibility for creating and submitting the BRD would be the business analyst. The subject matter experts and then the solution owner would review these requirements. Right? So whatever you have documented, you would review, the subject matter experts and the solution owner, basically the client team, the business team would review that, and then if they have any feedback, they would let you know, and then you can start updating that feedback. Finally, if they're okay with all the changes that you have made, they're good with the requirement, they would approve it. Right? So this is the generic structure in which your requirement activities happens. Okay. Now, depending on the scope of the system, how many features or functionality the system has, your first activity could be elaborated. Right? So we call that as a work breakdown structure. So we're effectively saying that my system has these 5 requirements, right? And I'm picking up each requirement and then figuring out how much time it would take. Right? A user registration might take me 2 days to understand and capture the requirement. Logging into an application would take another 2 days. Checking an account balance functionality might take me 3 days. Right? Transferring of funds would overall take 5 days, because it would involve both transfer within the bank and outside the bank. So 2 days for one and 3 days for another one. So overall, transferring of funds would take another 5 days, and paying the utility bills takes me another 5 days. Right. So this is how you can clearly break down your task and then create the work breakdown structure. Now, why do we do this? Because we would get closer to the estimates. So if you just ask me how much time would it take to capture the requirements for mobile banking app, right? It's difficult to answer. It might take me 15 days or 20 days or 30 days, I don't know, because it's difficult. But if I break it down and then say, what, okay, mobile banking has this 5 features, and if I look at each feature, then it's easier to tell for a smaller activity how much it takes than the overall bigger activity, right? So user registration, you can say, okay, broadly it might require 2 discussions of 2 hours each, and then I'll have to spend time documenting the requirement for 2 days. So overall, I could do it in 2 days, right? So the way you would estimate it again would be based on your experience and your understanding of the functionality. So sometimes you could take help from the SMEs also to arrive at this detail. Okay. So broadly, do you understand how to create this work breakdown structure and how it's done? I think somebody had some questions on this yesterday. So just wanted to make sure that you guys understood it. So clear on this?
Yes.
Okay. So along with that, you'd also capture the start and end date, right? So you have to say that your requirements are going to start on this day, and then so it would be like, let's say your requirements illustration starts on 1st April. So let's say with the user registration, so it's starting on 1st April. So it's taking 2 days. So I'll take 2 more days here. So right. So if you look at it, there would also be weekends, right? So 1st is a Friday. So 1st and 4th is when it should end, right? So because Saturdays and Sundays should not work. So you'll have to add that details as well. That's right. Yeah. So it would end on 4th, right? So then the next activity would start on 5th, and then this would take another 2 days. Right? So you start on 5th and complete it on actually 6th, right? So plus 1 day, since 5th and 6th will be covered, right? Right? Then on 7th you would start this another requirement and end it on 9th, 7th, 8th, 9th, right? Or rather, it should have been 11th. Right. So basically, you will create something like this. You'll figure out the schedule as well, right? And the another most important thing, you will identify the dependencies. Okay. Now, when you are capturing your requirements, some of them could be dependent on one another. Okay, like maybe for capturing the requirements for logging into an app, you might first want to capture the requirements for user registration, right? Unless you know what details, how you are registering, what is a user ID, are you going with a user ID password or a PIN number, right? So your login functionality would not be clear. So logically, it makes sense. First, you capture the requirements of user registration and then go to the login of the application, right? So we can create that dependencies and list it. So before capturing the requirements for login to app, you should have captured the requirements for user registration. So I'm listing down that dependency. Similarly, before you submit the BRD, you should have completed your requirement illustration and documentation. Unless you complete this activity 1, where your BRD is created, you cannot submit to the client for review. Right? Similarly, the client cannot review until you have submitted the BRD. Right? So only after you submit, the client would review. So update the feedback might go parallel to your requirements. So it might not be dependent on 3. Right? So I mean, while reviewing, you can also start updating. It may not be that only after 30th April that this guy business analyst can start updating. Right? And finally, it can be updated. The BRD can be approved only after all the feedback has been updated. Right? So you're basically listing down all your dependencies and also identifying who are the people who are working on each of these tasks. So these are the inputs which should generally go into a project plan, right? So a typical project plan, if you look at it, would look something like this. Okay. So you'd have all the task list and the work breakdown structure, the detailed task list as well. So this is the high level task, and then this is the work breakdown structure. Then you have the duration, the start and end date, the dependencies, the predecessors. Like you can map related processes to best practices only after task 23 is completed. What is task 23? You have to review the current process. So unless you have reviewed the processes, you could not have mapped it to the best practices, right? So you'll come up with this view. Okay, so this is called as a task grid, and then it's also shown in a pictorial view, right? So if you actually fill in the task grid, the pictorial view would come in automatically. So this is called as a Gantt chart. It pictorially tells us what is a task that is that we're doing, and the work breakdown structure also. If you look at the gray bars, these are the high level tasks, and the blue bars are the work breakdown structure. Okay, and then the arrows you see are showing us the dependencies, which means this particular task here. So this particular task here can start only after this is completed. Right? Rather it should be the other way. So this will be completed, and then you can start this. Right? Similarly, this can start only after this is completed. Right? So this can start after this is completed. So all those dependencies are also coming out in this Gantt chart view. So you can easily figure out, rather than go through this list, it gives you a much easier way of understanding how the activities are performed. Okay. So
I have one question on this. Like, I mean, is there any specific tool used to prepare this, or it can be just done in Excel? Because even Agile.
Yeah, most organizations use Microsoft Project for this. We call that as MPP, right? But again, there are some freewares also. Like what you're looking at is a screenshot from a freeware, right? Now, again, you are not going to use and prepare the project plan. Right? So you could just give your inputs in an Excel sheet. The business analyst, the project manager would own up the complete project plan, and then he would create this.
Okay, fine. Because if I'm not wrong, even in Agile, rather, what is that? Jira, there is also this kind of thing which can be done, right?
Yes. So Jira has a Gantt chart view, but we don't prepare project plans for Agile. It's mostly
Okay.
the product backlog, what we call it as. So the terms are different, and the process is also a little different. So I'll explain when we talk about Agile, the Scrum
Okay.
model, right?
Okay.
It's called
Thank
as a product model, and we capture the details of it,
you.
right?
Okay.
Yeah. So coming back to this, so broadly, this is how your planning exercise would go on. So you would only contribute to the requirement related activities, right? So you will not know what a design, work breakdown structure would be and all those details. You will not have those details, right? And you are not expected to contribute to that as well. Okay. So yeah. So that's first thing that you would do as part of a requirements management. Then, yeah, once a plan is the detailed plan is prepared, and both the project managers agree that okay, now we are good with the plan, then you would go on to the next activity, which is the requirement elicitation and definition, documentation. Okay, but before doing that, while the project managers are figuring out the planning session, there are a few more things that are agreed upon. First, the way in which the scope is managed, the way in which the changes to the requirements are managed, and the way the risks are managed. Right? Now, these are ongoing activities. Your scope could change at any point in time. There could be changes to the requirements coming at any point in time in the project. Right? So maybe even when you are doing your development, when the programmers are writing the programs based on the BRD that you have captured, the SME could come out to you and then ask, what, I want this requirement changed, right? So how do you handle that request? Are you going to just change the requirement and ask the developer to code it differently, or how are you going to handle that change? So you need to know that structure, the mechanism. There is a standard, well-known process, which would be used um, for change management. You need to understand that as well, right? And then there would be multiple risks related to the project. Okay, so primarily, since you are handling all the requirements related activities, any risk related to that, you'll have to capture them as well. So you need to understand that risk management approach as well. So all these frameworks are agreed as part of the project charter. So during the planning phase itself, you agree on all these frameworks, and ensure that you follow it throughout your project. So let's spend some time understanding how do we manage the scope, the changes and risk of the project as well, right? So yeah, before that, any questions, guys? Anything you want to check with? All right. So let's go one step by step.
Thanks for watching the video. Please like, comment and subscribe for more updates.